prefer clean and simple cards or cards that show off lots of techniques? What if you could combine these two styles into one card? Hi, I'm Ardith, and in today's video I'm going to show you how I made a card that looks simple but draws on a few ideas that I've been showing in my recent videos, using a Christmas die set to make a fall-themed card, and using colors that I created by mixing some others. And I've added in a couple of fun twists as well to take the card to the next level. Let's get started. I'm going to be using the Wreath layering dies from Birch Design. If you're watching this in September 2020, this set is on sale right now for $30 for all 4 dies, which is less than half price, so if you like them, it's a great time to grab them. I've put a link to all my supplies in the description below. I'm also using the ring from the Mandala card frame die. It's designed to fit perfectly with the rest of the wreath, and it gives a solid base that will show through. I'm also going to use some of the negative pieces from the top layer of the Avalon layering set, which cuts flowers and branches, which will be nice add-ons to my wreath. The wreath layer set was meant to be a Christmas set, but there's no reason why you can't use it all year long by simply changing the colors, and I'm going to be using some of the warm autumn colors I created in my previous video about getting more from your inks, which I've linked below. I'm going to focus on the Tiki Torch column, which means that all the colors I'm using are based on blends of other colors with Tiki Torch. And that means my first step is to blend Tiki Torch onto all the wreath layers that I cut, as well as onto that solid base. I'm using the large Altenew blending tools for my ink blending. They feel nice in my hand and they give quick coverage over large areas. I'm sure you've noticed that this wreath is going to have 5 layers, and that can be quite thick and heavy on a card, so I'm using Neenah Exact Index cardstock. I actually bought this by mistake. It says 110 pounds on it, but it's much lighter even than 80 pound. In fact, I would say it's about the same thickness as about 2 sheets of copy paper. And all this just shows that I clearly don't understand how paper weighting works, but this was a happy accident, since my friends tell me that it's a great weight for using with a gel press, which I bought recently, and that's going to make an appearance in an upcoming video. But it's also a great weight for something like this, where I'm going to be putting a lot of layers together. It is a bit flimsy, so I'm holding tight to it while I'm blending the ink onto it, so I don't get creases. And I wouldn't want to put a lot of water on it. Even blending ink onto it really saturates it quickly, so it's good to let these layers sit and dry for a few minutes. I'm sure you're also noticing that I'm not worrying about getting a really smooth blend. I think that any variations in the color will just add interest to my wreath. Now that all my pieces have that base layer of Tiki Torch, I'm going back in with my next color, which is Party Dress. These 2 colors combine to give a gorgeous warm orange color. I put the party dress on about 1/4 of each wreath layer, again not worried too much about the smoothness of my blend or about getting the same amount on each layer. After party dress comes Flirty Fuchsia, and the mix of fuchsia with Tiki Torch just makes me swoon. It's a purplish red that is so perfect for autumn, and it surprises me every time because I expect purple and yellow to make a muddy brown, but these 2 really don't. My original plan was to use all the colors in the column over top of Tiki Torch, but my spacing has been a little too generous, and I want to have the Tiki Torch on its own as one of my colors. So next I moved to Fiesta Blue. And mixing it with Tiki Torch gives a kind of deep aqua or teal, but looking at it now I kind of wish I had skipped it and used Lime Ricky to get a more of an olive green. Here's a quick look at how these layers will stack up. I'm going to turn them so that I don't have the same color over top of itself, if you see what I mean. This will give me a great mix of these autumn colors from all the different layers showing through. But before I glue them together, I'm going to give them a quick spritz of Avery Elle Shimmer Spray. This stuff is like magic with Catherine's inks, and as well as adding a beautiful shimmer, it seems to soften the blends and give the paper a velvety texture. After they're dry, I use liquid glue to glue the 5 layers together, starting from the bottom and working up. I put glue on the back of the next layer up, and then as I glue them together, I turn them to try and be sure that each color on the top layer has a different color showing through from the bottom layer. I'll continue that as I move up through the layers to get that multicolored look. I put an acrylic block on my stack as I add glue to the next layer. These die cuts layer up really easily by just making sure that the little berry holes line up. The cutout design is a repeat of 6 groupings of berries and leaves, so this makes it easy to ensure everything's in the right place, and the liquid glue gives you that wiggle time to make sure that the lineup is precise. When I get to the top layer, this one has the biggest holes, so it also has the smallest amount of paper for the glue. I just put tiny, tiny drops around it, and then I give it a final turn before putting it down on the rest and placing the acrylic block on top while it sets. My next step is to use some metallic gold jewels from Pretty Pink Posh to act as the berries. This mix has 4 or 5 different sizes of jewels, and I quickly discovered that the smallest jewels fit right into the berry holes in the wreath design. I love the idea that I could get some subtle sparkle without any bumpy bits sticking up, so I added drops of liquid glue into the berry holes, and then I used my jewel picker to place the jewels right in. Then I thought it would be fun to kick this card up a notch by creating a hole in the front of the card base and having the sentiment on the inside of the card. I started by finding a circle die that was slightly bigger than the center hole of the wreath, and then I placed the die in the center of the card front and taped it down with some purple tape before running it through my Gemini Junior. Then I added liquid glue to the back of my wreath and I glued it on, and I put it back under that block to dry. I'm really happy that my 5-layer wreath is not too heavy, but this thin paper is also more likely to warp when it gets wet, like with this glue, so using the block is important for ensuring that you don't get warping. I want my sentiment to be that gorgeous red color that I created with Tiki Torch and Flirty Fuchsia. I got out a scrap of cardstock, and this is 80-pound Neenah, and I pressed my Tiki Torch ink pad right onto the paper. And then I did the same with the Flirty Fuchsia, and while that dried, I cut 4 of the Hello Sugar Script die, which I'm going to stack up. This time I'm using the thicker cardstock, and in total I'll have 5 layers, 4 white and 1 of that gorgeous red. This will give me a thick, sturdy sentiment, and when I glue it to the inside of the card, it'll rise through the hole in the center and still be about the same height as the wreath. Okay, now there's just one more step. Remember, way back to the beginning, I showed you some die-cut flowers and branches. I've popped them all out of the die cut, and now I'm going to just add some color to them direct to paper before I add them to the wreath. For the branch, I started by putting down some lime Ricky. Then I added Tiki Torch to one side and Party Dress to the other. This gives some variation and visual interest while keeping them green. Then I added Tiki Torch and Party Dress to the larger flowers and some Flirty Fuchsia just on the edges. For the centers, I used just Tiki Torch to add some brightness. I glued them all together, but in the end, I used 2 of the flowers stacked together to give me more impact on the wreath. I did add a dark brown dot to the center. This is my favorite kind of card to make. It looks simple, but I put a lot into it. This video has been a little different from some of my recent ones. Instead of focusing on one technique and making a bunch of cards, I made one card with a bunch of techniques. Which type of video do you prefer? Let me know in the comments below. Here are links to 2 of the videos I mentioned. They'll give you more information about some of the techniques I used today. The top one is about creating more colors with however many inks you have, and the bottom one is about using all of your dyes all year long. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time!